Welcome back to the Jackson Neill Sports Podcast here on Thursday, March 28th, 2019. Today I have Mike Bormann of 92.3 The Fan in Cleveland coming on to the show. Remember, you can listen to this podcast on SoundCloud, Stitcher, iTunes, YouTube, Spotify. Basically, wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find this one, as well as JacksonNeillPodcast.com, the new home for this podcast, as well as my several others. So today, bringing on Mike Bormann of 92.3 The Fan in Cleveland to talk about the Browns and their latest moves this offseason, including getting Kareem Hunt, Odell Beckham, what they're going to do in the draft coming up next month, all of that stuff. So a big thank you to Mike for coming onto the podcast, and here's my conversation with him. So I just want to start off by asking, what kind of expectations did the Browns have coming into this offseason?
Well, I think there were a lot of expectations. If you're referring to the fans, I mean, the team, the fans, the city, like who are you referring to exactly?
I guess just what the fans, what did they expect from the team? What kind of moves did they expect to make this offseason?
Yeah, I think the expectations were, through the roof for the fans. They wanted, I think they wanted to see some additions on the defense, and they got those additions on the defense. Still probably looking for a couple more. But you got a couple, you got a pass rusher to Olivier Vernon. You got Sheldon Richardson coming in to help bolster the run defense and clog up the middle a little bit. But, I think what's funny, Jackson, is that, you had so many of these rumors at, different times involving Odell Beckham Jr. And, I mean, they sounded good, certainly, but it was kind of a matter of, is this really going to happen? And why would Gettleman trade him? And, all that stuff. And I think after a while, it just got to a point where I know from my perspective, on the radio here in Cleveland, is that, you're hearing these and you're like kind of rolling your eyes. Here we go again. Now Dorsey's he's a wheeler and dealer, so there's no question about that. And you knew that the conversations were probably taking place, but in the end, I didn't see it happening. But wow, I mean, I think even the addition of Odell Beckham Jr. I think it's safe to say that he even exceeded the fans' expectations, because realistically, I don't think anybody thought they wanted it to, but I don't think they realistically thought that was going to come to fruition. And here we are, and the fans are geeked, and it's not even April yet.
It certainly is wild. I mean, there was a lot, Odell Beckham being just a huge acquisition. Touch on that one. How much does getting him change, I guess, the landscape of this team?
Oh, gosh. I mean, obviously you're talking about a playmaker and one of the top playmakers in the league. It opens it up for everybody else. I mean, that's the easy answer. Jarvis Landry is his old college buddy at LSU, and it opens him up to kind of go back to his comfort level as that underneath guy. But Odell Beckham Jr., obviously he's a deep threat, and we know that Baker Mayfield is extremely accurate throwing the football down the field. He's also a guy that, and you saw Baker do this a lot last year. You throw him that quick little slant, and Beckham is just, he's made a pretty nice living off of that so far in his career. He can take that the distance, and Baker is obviously has done very well in that aspect too. He's just a very accurate guy. But I mean, it's just when you throw him in here, Jackson, if they didn't even get Odell, okay, and it was Jarvis Landry and David Njoku and Antonio Callaway, Nick Chubb, you're still looking at a team that, while they're lacking that big outside guy, playmaker, they're still a dangerous offense. Now you throw not only an outside receiver and a playmaker, but arguably one of the top three playmakers in all of football. I mean, you've got so many weapons on this team right now offensively, and so many toys for Baker Mayfield to play with. I mean, it's downright scary to think about it when they finally all get on the field.
Yeah, I mean, looking at that offense, especially on paper right now, it looks like one of the most dangerous in the NFL. And with Baker entering his second season and now all of these weapons at his disposal, what do you think are some reasonable, what do you think is a reasonable outlook for him for next season?
It's interesting. I mean, he broke the rookie record for touchdowns, and obviously did that he didn't get in until obviously that third game. And he didn't obviously have anywhere near the weapons he has here now. I would say that, it's reasonable to think 35 to 40 TDs, because I think he's going to be putting it up a lot. Obviously, you got to respect the running game too, with Nick Chubb. That's probably, it kind of feels ridiculous saying these sorts of things and these numbers, but in the offense he's in and the comfort level he has with Freddie Kitchens, just the quarterback he is and the guy that he is, he's going to put in the time. He's a very, Baker's a really smart quarterback. That wasn't talked about enough coming out of the draft. And I just think that, he gets it. Now, is there a possibility that he takes a step or two back? Sure. I mean, there's, defenses game planning for him. I think not just Baker, but everybody on that Browns team and that entire team is now the hunted as opposed to being the hunter. And that's going to, it's going to probably have somewhat of an effect. But I think there's a reason Dorsey was all in on Baker Mayfield and all in on Baker Mayfield from the beginning. He kind of lives for this spotlight. And so, I mean, honestly, I don't know why 35, 40 touchdowns can't be possible when you look at what he was able to do last year in a limited amount of games, and certainly with nowhere near the talent and the talent developed to the point where he's going to have next year heading into the season.
Yes, certainly. And those are huge numbers, but when you look at, what he has, I mean, they seem completely reasonable, which is just absurd.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, it's, and he's in his second year. So, I mean, there has to be a little bit, and he will. I mean, he's going to get everybody's best shot. And, in the NFL, there's a reason why these guys get paid a lot of money, defensive coordinators. I mean, they're coming up with so many different things. But, like I said, Baker's kind of been that guy that, okay, you've done this. Now what about this? Okay, well, you started at Oklahoma. Now you won the Heisman Trophy. Now can you be? It's just every single level and every single obstacle he's been asked to overcome and jump over, he's done. So it's somewhat it seems unfair, but at the same time, this is who Baker Mayfield is, and this is why John Dorsey was not hesitant at all in drafting him number 1 overall last year.
Exactly. I mean, at that point, a lot of people viewed it as a questionable pick, but man, it certainly has turned out pretty well so far.
Yeah, there were. It was funny because I liked him, and there's been plenty that I was wrong on, but he was a guy that, I'm an Ohio State fan, Ohio State alum, and I watched him and Oklahoma against Ohio State a couple seasons ago, and as frustrated as I was as a Buckeye fan, I'm going, this guy is amazing. And but then, it was more than that, like the leadership stuff and the swagger stuff. You didn't really get a sense. I brought this up many times on my show that, Robert Klemko is a great writer with Monday Morning Quarterback, and he did a 4-part series on Baker, and it really, I know it opened my eyes to a lot of, who Baker is, not just throwing the football, but like I said, his IQ, how much time he puts into it, how he processes information. And those are things that are, just as important as being able to, cut it through 30-mile-an-hour winds coming off Lake Erie. And he's got that. And I think on draft day, when his name was called, it was kind of a mixed reaction. Obviously I was happy. But I can tell you this: I didn't expect it to be this soon and this good. And I mean, it's he's taken it to a whole new level. And yeah, I mean, John Dorsey obviously hit this one and others. But as we found out in Cleveland over the last 2 decades, if you don't take care of this position, and not only do you not take care of it, but you whiff on it for the better part of 2 decades, obviously you're going to be in big trouble. And now, they finally found their guy, and now it's about, putting all the pieces around him, which obviously John Dorsey's doing.
Especially, and you're exactly right. You find that player who it looks like Baker can be that special guy. You got to put everything around him, which they are doing. In the AFC North, there was also a lot of, the Ravens and the Steelers especially made a lot of moves. Where do you think the Browns are in terms of the division as of right now?
I think talent-wise, I mean, just on paper, talent-wise, I think it's fair to say that they are, if not right there, they're maybe tops as far as, on paper, the talent. But I think you have to give respect to, and John Harbaugh, and I know, John Harbaugh likes to, during the week of, he'll talk the team up, even when the Browns were 0-16 and 1-15. Harbaugh had no problem saying how tough of a game it was going to be when he knew damn well it wasn't. But, he said at the league meetings this week that, this is the most talented team in the division. And I think where you might just kind of blow that off and say it's coach speak and he's throwing out some smoke screens, whatever. I think he believes that, and I think everybody really can believe that. Now, the difference is, and it goes without saying, and it's cliche at this point, but games aren't won on paper. But in terms of the talent level, Pittsburgh obviously lost Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell, and while they were, big problems in the locker room and distractions and all of that stuff, they were extremely talented football players. Now, James Conner and Juju Smith-Schuster and obviously Ben Roethlisberger is a Hall of Fame quarterback. But I think really, the Browns can go toe-to-toe with anybody, again, on paper. But now we understand, and now, this is where the script takes another, it gets flipped again because, okay, you have all this talent and it's so young. Now it's not just about Baker being able to step into the spotlight on a regular basis. How do all these other guys step into the spotlight? And really, obviously Freddie Kitchens is going to be questioned in that regard. I think he's going to do a great job. There's a reason why he did get this the head coaching position, but I think it's fair to have those question marks, just like a lot of the other, first year, second year, third year players, where you say, okay, well, now it's a totally different deal. I mean, they're not taking anybody by surprise. They're not getting anybody, who's surprised when they're facing them on game day. And now the expectations, not just league wide, but right here in Cleveland, fan base. So how do they react to that? But I think in terms of the talent, just pure talent standpoint, I don't think it's a homer call on my part to say they're the most talented, at least on paper, in the AFC North division.
Exactly. I definitely don't think that's a homer call. I think even Vegas has them as as one of the favorites in all of the AFC. Just kind of wrapping up. I guess I know it's only March. We haven't even had the draft yet. But if you had to give your outlook for this team, if you had to give your best case or your worst case scenario, what would you say for this Browns team heading into next season?
Oh wow! Best case and worst case. I think they're a playoff team. I mean, I think they, with the addition of Beckham, I think it's very easily definitely a 9-win team, possibly 10. You could be looking even 11-5. And best case is, I do think they're a playoff team. How deep they go. Well, I mean, obviously we know best case is, they go all the way, but that might be a bit premature because that's, look, you've got, and not even a bit premature, it is premature. I mean, you've got still the New England Patriots who, until somebody knocks them off, they're still the champs, and they still have to win the division. And then you have Kansas City, and San Diego's not going anywhere. So, there's some talented teams in the AFC, but I don't think there's any reason to think the Browns can't be, a playoff team and possibly even go deep in the postseason. Now, worst case scenario, I think worst cases, and I think if we're talking worst case, we're factoring injuries in here. But even if we're not factoring in injuries, if we want to go back to the beginning of the conversation, Jackson, where, it was, Baker's got to stay healthy, and then not only, Baker staying healthy, but how does everybody react to all this? Does it become a distraction? Does it become too much? Do you have, issues in the locker room and on the field about, hey, I'm not getting my touches, and what about me? That sort of thing. Just because you're talented, you go back to the quote-unquote dream team of the Philadelphia Eagles, whenever that was, I think 2011 or something like that, maybe before that. And they didn't even make the postseason. It was, you got all this talent. You got Nnamdi Asomugha, Michael Vick, but they didn't even make the postseason. So there's no doubt that, they have a ton of talent, but there is a long way to go and a big process to take all that talent, mold it together, and put the best product and the best team, everybody working together on the field. So that remains to be seen. But I would say worst case is, they're 500 because it just, it was too much too soon, or they had injuries. But I think this is definitely a team that's going to compete and very realistically get in the postseason.
Exactly. Yeah, things are looking really up there in Cleveland. Mike, thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
My pleasure, Jackson. Anytime, just let me know. I appreciate it.
Again, a big thank you to Mike for coming onto the podcast. Remember, go down in the description. I have links to his Twitter. I have links to where you can find him on 92.3 The Fan in Cleveland. Really, really fun guy to listen to, and had an awesome time talking with him on the podcast. So go make sure to check out his stuff down there. And that will do it for this episode of the Jackson Neill Sports Podcast. Remember, you can check this one, as well as my long-form interview podcast, Anything Goes with Jackson Neill, and my music podcast, all on jacksonneillpodcasts.com. There you can find episodes for all of those. Also, if you really like this content, if you really are enjoying all the podcasts that I produce, make sure to go become a member on Patreon. Links to that down in the description. Different membership tiers, you get access to bonus content at the end of the month, including an extra segment from my sports podcast, my music podcast, some extra questions from interviews that I do, all of that cool stuff. The first bonus content is coming next Monday, April 1st, so make sure to go subscribe down there. Also, down in the description are links to my social medias, at JacksonNeill20 on Instagram and Twitter, so go give me a follow there. Check out all the links that I have on those social medias. Well, that's it. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you all next time.